Good evening, everyone. So we are all gathering this Wednesday night, as usual, to learn the meditation and practice the meditation. Practice of a meditation actually is a practice not to be somebody, not to be somewhere. It's not to be someone. That's why when we practice, we have to leave everything behind, whatever the history we have, whatever the past we have been through. In the meantime, also not expecting what will be after the meditation, or what will be in the future. So it's more of a person with nothing. But due to our own lack of understanding, we often create certain forms and certain identities and attach to those forms and identities. And as a result of that, a meditation itself oftentimes becomes we are attached to certain forms or ways to practice or certain tradition, and it goes on like that. And as a result of that, rather than attaining the good result from the practice, we basically topping more layers onto the layers that we already have, rather than peeling the layers out to see the nothingness. So that's why the moment when we practice meditation, if we still have certain forms, identities, and certain expectations to be or this and that, that means you got to change that understanding or that attitude. So-called freeing oneself from any forms of attachments. Obviously, we attach to ourselves, which body, which mind. And this attachment, again, are due to not knowing clearly that this is, in fact, I have no control over it, and it's changing all the time, and eventually, again, it will just fades away. But naturally, again, this is the natural part that we have a duty to fulfill. To look after this body, to look after this mind, taking care of this body, having a good rests, and having a sufficient nutritious foods, and a sufficient exercise to keep it going. And that's called a natural need that we have to fulfill to sustain this physical body. At the same time, this natural needs, which we cannot avoid of it, we have to fulfill these duties whether we like it or not. And that fulfillment, in fact, giving us relatively healthy body, healthy life, so that we can carry on. And as a result of not understanding it, oftentimes we have developed attachment to this, that this is me, this is mine. we're creating our certain forms and identities and so on, and attached to these certain views that I have, and I believe in it, and this is what it is. The teachings of the Buddha is something that relates to the fulfilling this duty properly, not just a response to the natural phenomena that we have to abide by, but also when we are reacting or responding or abiding to these natural aspects, we basically become more conscious of how should we do it in a proper way so that it doesn't conflict oneself and then to others, and also not conflict with the nature. And that's called the ability to fulfilling the duty dutifully, in a respectful and skillfully. When we manage to do that way, then what happens that we understand that this natural phenomena that we are abide by, or we have to deal with it, in fact that's also naturally changing. And with that naturally changing aspects, all the actions that we are doing, so-called the duties that we are fulfilling, that's also we recognize, in fact, that's just for the temporary. And this temporal activities again reflects that actually my every actions, it has some form of a reactions that brings either happiness or unhappiness. As a result of that, the Buddha also mentioned that human beings are social beings. One cannot stay alone without having any relationship or contact with another beings. When one realizes that, then every actions becomes more skillfully dealt and done and fulfill the duties. That dutifully acting towards the nature, towards the relationship, the interrelationship of ourselves to this, actually bringing peace and happiness. And that peace and happiness simply because there is no identity of a me and a mine. The practice of a meditation is that we have to learn that aspects of it so that we can improve more of a real happiness, attainment of a real happiness in our day-to-day life. Then we will not be too much caught up with the worldly affairs, and we will be spending some time to deal with our own mental states, which again also leads to the freedom, understanding that this itself also conditioned and changing all the time, and this changing nature. So we cannot have a firm a view or a attachment to the certain forms and identities, rather these are just interconnected, and let it be. Right? And with that, we ourselves understanding that myself, so I call it me, actually it's a part of the natural phenomena that I have to fulfill the duties as long as it goes on. In the meantime, the fulfillment of this duty, so skillfully performing to gain the wisdom, and this wisdom will lead us to free ourselves, who we really are. So practice, although we start off with adopting a certain one object to focus on, and eventually as we develop the concentration, and having a clear mind, we are able to discern these different aspects of the practice and the realization, so that meditation helps us to see actually there is nothing that I should hold on to or should attach to. This eventually goes off. Right? And that begins with understanding that everything changes, this changing in nature. When enabled to understand it, brings a suffering, and a subject that is changing all the time. We cannot make it or think that this should be permanent entity. And with that, it's like peeling the onions. So eventually, we understood that each layers of an onion leading to the emptiness of it. So, in the practice of a meditation, however, in order to gain the progress, we have to have a certain mindsets to just develop, or have a frame, beginning with a regularity and checking ourselves whether our faith and our actions have been purely fulfilled or not, as we say it and as we done or not. And in the meantime, how much effort do we apply to practice and develop this meditation? So once we have got that frame and effort, adopting one object and working with that, and eventually we gain the further development of the meditation. So I offer this as a reflection for tonight, and with this, let's practice meditation. So sitting in a comfortable position, leaving all your responsibilities and just be here and now, and spend some time on the breath, incoming breath and outgoing breath. Observing incoming breath and outgoing breath closely. And understanding the different breaths. And further understanding that each breath are different and it's changing. I have no control over it. And similarly, internalizing, contemplating on the materiality or the form, the physical body, that we don't have a control over it, because it's made of the major 4 elements, and these 4 elements are working on its own way. And the feeling, whatever feelings, that's also arises and changes. A feeling arises due to some form of a contact with something. And it's changing so fast. any perceptions or any memories of anything. That's also changing so fast. Similarly, checking any intention to react to anything or simply responding to it. Consciously aware, even the consciously aware that is changing too. So reflecting on this 5 aggregate as changing factors, and because of it we experience certain sufferings, difficulties. While we cannot make it stop, while checking our own views on certain things, certain knowledges, am I attached to it? Like the Venerable Moggallana, when he was contemplating on a certain object, he felt sleepiness. Then the Buddha requested him to check whether that object making him to be sleepiness. So in that case, rather than spending on that object, reflecting the Dhamma that he had heard, and further on, not only reflecting, he should chant. So chanting is also another form of waking the mind up to see the reality. And even that, if a mind is not ready yet, the Buddha even suggested to use the fingers to, cleaning the ears and wake you up. So different forms of a meditation are there. Different ways to wake the mind up, to see the reality. So similarly, checking ourselves, am I attached to any forms? Am I attached to any views? Any concepts? Then maintaining your awareness on the breath. Not letting mind drift away, but being with the breath in the meantime, reflecting on these aspects to see clearly. So continue practicing until you hear the gong.